I knew the soul of the company had flatlined the moment they took the communal coffee grinder off the second floor and replaced it with a pod-based caffeine experience station. 12 years, 3 office moves, and a startup that once prided itself on grit had become a playground for buzzword bullies in tailored socks. I watched from my corner desk. Well, technically it used to be my office before open concept culture arrived and turned privacy into a personality flaw. In the beginning, we were 5 people and a dog named Cisco, huddled around folding tables, building something that mattered. We stayed late, we fought hard, and we celebrated every small win with beer from a vending machine we'd hacked to accept high fives instead of coins. But somewhere between Series C and Synergy alignment workshops, the soul got outsourced. Now, the founders wear lanyards with their own faces on them and pretend they don't know your name unless you're holding a ring light. Me, I'm Donna, operations lead, or at least I used to be. These days, I'm more like furniture that hums quietly in the background, ignored but still plugged in. Every meeting, I sit with my notepad and my muted mic, while Tyler, yes, the VP's adult son with the professional experience of a baked potato, stumbles through leadership calls using phrases like delivering gamified agility and flattening hierarchical dissonance. I swear, if he ever learns what a flowchart actually is, the earth might crack open. But I stay quiet. I've learned that when you're underestimated, you're free to observe, to document, to prepare. They reorganized my department 6 months ago, said it was about fresh direction. Translation: handed my logistics team to a guy named Chad who once tried to sync a calendar invite in Excel. I wasn't even mad. It was almost impressive. They dismantled a system I built over a decade and replaced it with PowerPoint enthusiasm and espresso-fueled delusion. What they didn't do, though, what they forgot to do, is remove me from the company's legacy authorization portal. You see, back in the day, when we were too small to afford a compliance team, I was listed as an authorized signatory. That meant I had rights, real ones, legal ones, rights to approve contracts, co-sign financial filings, validate compliance submissions. They never revoked them, probably because the current HR lead thinks signatory is a type of pen. I've checked weekly out of habit, like someone checking if their old apartment key still works. And it does. Quietly, reliably. My name still lives in the back end of 3 systems that matter. And lately, I've been wondering when exactly I'd need to use it. Anyway, before we go further, let me just say this real quick. If you're the kind of person who enjoys watching the underdog walk out with the match still burning behind her, maybe hit that subscribe button. Give us a like too. Keeps the team caffeinated and the chaos flowing. Now, back to our regularly scheduled downfall. The shift came slow at first. Fewer invites, fewer quick syncs. Then came the feedback loops and culture checkpoints, where HR would pull me into Zoom calls that felt like bad improv auditions. "We just want to know how you're feeling, Donna," they'd coo while their Slack window reflected off their glasses. I always smiled. I always said I was here to support the mission. I always took notes. Tyler led most of those meetings. Tyler, who wore sneakers that cost more than my first car and who referred to people as resources. Tyler, who once told me, "Donna, the vibe is off when you ask too many questions about process." Tyler, who had a whiteboard in his office labeled enemies list. I know because I saw my name spelled wrong on it, twice. Still, I endured. I documented everything. When HR cut my direct reports, I archived the before and after org charts. When Tyler sent me Slack messages at 11:47 p.m. demanding I rewrite a budget he didn't understand, I screen recorded them. When they approved a vendor without compliance review, I flagged it in the right system, quietly, with my signature. Because that's the thing about being pushed into a shadow, you can see everyone clearly, so I waited. I watched the cracks spread, and I smiled when I saw what was coming. The first time Tyler said culture renovation out loud, I swear the HVAC system wheezed like it knew something unholy was about to happen. He was standing at the front of the Monday leadership sink, flanked by 2 overpaid consultants in identical shirts that looked like they'd been ironed with a laser beam. His opening slide? A Photoshop stock photo of people high-fiving across a glass conference table with the words, "Let's rehumanize the brand." No one laughed, no one blinked. We'd learned that reacting only prolonged the pain. "New energy," he said, pacing like a TED talk reject. "We're moving away from legacy thinking. That means reimagining the vibe, top to bottom." What Tyler meant, though he'd never say it out loud, was, we're replacing anyone with crow's feet and common sense. The rollout started immediately. Everyone over the age of 35 suddenly found themselves invited to one-on-ones with HR. The language was always the same. "Hey, just a quick vibes check. I want to make sure you're aligned with the company's future-forward emotional rhythm." I got my meeting invite Tuesday morning. Calendar title, Donna 1 Re Synergy Outlook. HR rep was Jessica, 27, MBA, hair like a shampoo commercial, and the emotional depth of a ring light. She began with a breathy, "We just want to support you during this exciting transition." I gave her nothing. No resistance, no anger, just a nod and a smile. I let her talk, let her squirm when the silence got heavy. I took out my pen and added a note to the corner of my legal pad. exciting transition equals incoming severance denial setup. That same week, my calendar started looking like a ghost town. Meetings disappeared. Threads I'd been looped into for years dried up like someone had flipped the ignore switch. My name was left off invites I'd created. A junior associate now ran the shipping operations review I'd built from scratch. And in the Thursday leadership sync, it happened. We were mid-call, faces in boxes. Tyler leaning too close to his webcam like he thought proximity made him powerful. He cleared his throat and said, "Before we wrap, I want to flag some feedback we've received about tone." No name, but every eye shifted toward me like gravity had shifted. "Legacy staff," he continued, "need to adapt to the velocity of change. We can't have negativity slowing the energy." I didn't flinch, didn't frown. I just wrote down the exact words, negativity slowing the energy. It wasn't just a shot across the bow. It was the start of the public campaign. The kind where they humiliate you so often you start to pack your own box just to escape the slow bleed. That night, I found out my internal permissions had been edited. My access to budget review folders gone, vendor selection dashboards locked. My name was removed from project approvals I used to co-lead. HR had quietly gone to IT with a list, and it showed. Except they missed one. See, most folks think IT controls the kingdom. They don't. Legal does. And legal uses a completely separate system for credentialed compliance signatories. It's older than dirt and not integrated into the shiny HR software Tyler's team imported from a SAW brochure. The permissions list in legal still had me at the top, not as a legacy user, not as a courtesy title, but as an active authority. Specifically, co-signatory for NDA modifications, compliance escalation initiator, whistleblower clause validator. And if you think I found that out by accident, you've never been quietly exiled by a boy who once used learnings as a plural noun in a QBR. I checked the system that night, sipping boxed wine in my kitchen with a heating pad on my back. My name was still glowing green in the access log. Last edited, October 2018, by the founder himself. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I didn't believe it, but because for the first time in months, I felt something besides dull humiliation. Felt leverage, so I pulled out the folder I'd been building. Yes, the literal folder. Printed documents, emails, Slack screenshots, calendar removals, a real, honest-to-God binder. Inside was everything: dates of retaliatory behavior, evidence of age-based bias, slashed responsibilities post-reorg, names of every staff member let go without proper co-signature, and most importantly, the unsigned vendor contract that Tyler approved without compliance. All it needed was one signature, mine, to turn into a mandatory legal review. I closed the folder, set it on the counter, and said to my cat, "Let's see how fast he can spell lawsuit." Then I slept like a baby. They say betrayal doesn't feel like a knife. It feels like a whisper that keeps getting repeated until you start bleeding in places you can't see. That whisper started in our Tuesday team sync when one of the new performance consultants, Reed, Tyler's fraternity buddy and business casual, slipped in a comment about legacy friction. It was subtle, directed at someone who may be resisting the new culture. But eyes glanced toward me like they always do when truth and cowardice collide. By Wednesday, it wasn't whispers anymore. It was strategy. Tyler started working the younger leads, building a little militia of loyalty through shared DMs, happy hours, and quick huddles. If you were under 30 and used the word optics in casual conversation, you were suddenly in Tyler's orbit. The narrative? Donna's outdated. Donna's moody. Donna slows us down. One morning, I caught sight of an open Slack thread as I walked past the sales bullpen. "How do we escalate blockers from folks who won't evolve with us?" The message was from Tyler. The reply underneath, from someone who couldn't even schedule a Zoom without tech support, said, "Just wait. Old trees fall when no one waters them." Cute, so I documented it. Screenshot, timestamps, sender, recipient, into the binder. It had become a ritual by now. Every dig, every bypass decision, every spreadsheet edited without my input got printed and three-hole punched like it was gospel. I was building a paper fortress. Then came the kicker, a Friday stand-up where Tyler, smirking like he'd invented synergy, openly said to the group, "We have to be real about who's fueling the future and who's just clinging to the past." He looked right at me. I smiled and wrote down the exact words. The binder didn't just hold evidence. It held truth. And truth, my friend, is more combustible than gossip if you know where to toss the match. That afternoon, I got lunch with Melanie, one of the last people in legal with both a backbone and a brain. We built the original vendor compliance process together back when the company still used spreadsheets and pizza parties to solve burnout. Over grilled cheese and lukewarm tomato soup, she leaned in and whispered, "They never filed a change request on your authority." I blinked. She nodded. "You're still listed in the signing vault. All three categories. No overrides filed. You're not just an observer, Donna. You're still a legal keystone. They just forgot." No one had ever said anything sweeter to me in my life. I finished my soup, went home, logged in. She was right. Everything was still live, Category 12, dual signature requirement on NDAs, Category 8, compliance triggered audit initiator, Category 3, Internal ethics flag cosigner, that last one? The one most people forget exists. It's buried behind 1,000 clicks, and it's never used unless something's really rotten. But if triggered and co-signed by an authorized signer, it forces legal to open a formal internal review, no matter who it implicates. That night, I clicked it, typed exactly 13 words in the reason box, repeated cultural retaliation and policy violations under unqualified leadership authority escalation. Then I clicked co-sign. System asked, confirm signer identity. I held up my badge to the webcam. System pinged green. Then a line popped up, second signatory required to complete submission. I smiled and sent a secure message to Melanie. 2 hours later, the second signature dropped. The review had been activated, and per company bylaws, it was now legally required to be opened, logged, and escalated within 14 business days. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to fight. All I had to do was follow the rules they forgot I helped write. That night, I added a new tab to my binder, Active Processes, because now the clock was ticking. And the moment they found out, they'd panic. Good. The all-hands meeting invite hit my inbox at 7:43 a.m. sharp. No agenda, just the title, Recentering the Mission, Culture Alignment Town Hall. Translation, public flogging disguised as corporate cheerleading. I poured my coffee, buttoned my blouse, and turned on my webcam. Tyler's face filled the screen first, framed in some ridiculous faux leather executive chair like he was delivering a fireside chat, instead of what we all knew this was going to be, a forced confession with emojis. He opened strong, of course. Team, we've made amazing progress building a values-driven culture, he said, gesturing to a pie chart that meant absolutely nothing. But progress always meets resistance. And we're here today to acknowledge, address, and realign where needed. My Slack lit up. Private DMs. Colleagues with that sixth sense you get in toxic jobs. He's gonna come for you. Don't say anything, no matter what. Remember, this is being recorded. I didn't respond. I just sat there with a neutral face and a pad of paper, pretending to take notes while the opening ceremony dragged on. Then, halfway through, Tyler leaned forward and dropped the bomb. I want to briefly address some confusion caused by comments and tone from senior staff members who, frankly, haven't aligned with our new mission. We believe in transparency and accountability. So today, Donna will be offering a brief statement of apology for creating unnecessary confusion during this transition. I froze, not because I was shocked. I expected it. Hell, I planned for it, but because he didn't even have the decency to warn me ahead of time. Donna, he continued, not even turning toward my feed, go ahead. I unmuted myself. In the interest of I began. Click. Muted. On screen, the red slash over my mic told the story loud and clear. He silenced me in front of the entire company. 178 participants watching. That's when it happened. Not rage, not panic, clarity. I reached for my lanyard. Slow, deliberate, like a priest holding up a relic before a congregation that's forgotten what power looks like. I lifted my badge toward the webcam. Black rectangle. Old lettering. Slightly worn edges. Under my photo, authorized signatory operational clearance tier 3. The screen didn't blink, the silence stretched. Tyler stared blankly, unsure what I was doing. The interns probably thought it was performance art, but legal knew exactly what that badge meant, because no one ever got one of those unless they'd been granted system-level clearance and legal authorization. And no one ever kept one of those, unless someone forgot to take it away. I held it for 5 seconds, long enough to be noticed, long enough to be screen capped. Then I lowered it, folded my hands, and stared directly into the camera. Not defiant, not angry, just calm. Tyler stumbled. He actually said, thank you, Donna, and moved on, trying to wrap the meeting like nothing had happened. But something had, because while he was busy muting my voice, he'd forgotten to mute my authority. Behind the scenes, I'd already used it. 3 days before this meeting, I'd logged in and executed a compliance escalation trigger for retaliatory behavior, a notification to internal legal of unresolved dual auth violations on 2 vendor contracts, and a preliminary ethics notice on HR's bypass of structural protocol without dual sign-off, each one submitted with valid credential clearance. Each one backed by documentation, each one bearing my digital signature, and each one time-stamped. Immutable, the meeting ended, Slack exploded, some messaged me with crying emojis, some just sent the badge emoji. One brave soul said, you just Thanos snapped the board without saying a word. I didn't reply, I logged off. Then I opened my binder and added a sticky note to the tab marked Endgame. He muted me. I answered in ink, and somewhere deep in the bowels of legal's inbox, those filings were already ticking like a slow burn bomb. Because I wasn't just holding up a badge, I was holding up a mirror. And Tyler, he just saw himself in it, ugly and unprotected. 10 minutes after the all hands ended, the panic didn't creep, it detonated. Legal's war room, usually reserved for quarterly contract reviews and the occasional harassment training video, suddenly filled like someone pulled a fire alarm underwater. People sprinting in suits, printers jamming, phones vibrating off tables. It smelled like toner and doom. Inside, a junior analyst named Cody, bless his overachieving heart, stood pale-faced with a printed spreadsheet in one hand and his other hand gripping a Red Bull like it was communion wine. 3 major retention letters were finalized under Donna's credentials, he announced, voice cracking as he pointed to the system log, and 2 NDAs were updated as of yesterday. These were not just drafted, they were submitted. Silence. One of the senior counsels, Brenda, a woman with highlighters for fingers, snatched the papers from him and scanned like her eyes were on fast forward. Then her face turned that color HR usually reserves for discussing lawsuits. Jesus Christ, she muttered. These signatures are binding. Tyler, who had slithered in late with a smoothie that matched his tie, blinked. Wait, you're saying she actually used her clearance? I thought she was just doing a bit like a power move. Brenda didn't even look at him. This isn't TikTok, Tyler. This is federal contract law, he scoffed. Okay, but can't we just retract the filings? That's when Cody dropped the second bomb. No, sir. Her authority was never revoked in the legacy system. The timestamp shows the filings were submitted with full co-signatory clearance, and one of them triggered client-side disclosure obligations. Another silence. This one deeper, meaner. Because in the background of this chaos, the real problem was already crawling its way out of the shadows. Clients knew. One of the NDAs Donna updated included an embedded clause, standard practice, back when she helped write the damn templates, that forced a notification to the other party if material changes in leadership behavior were flagged by an internal authority. And since Donna was still recognized as such, those notifications had automatically triggered. 2 clients had already replied. One email read, "We appreciate the transparency. Please advise how these culture violations will be addressed internally before we proceed further." The other was less polite. "Pending review of your compliance governance, we are pausing all activity under our MOU. Breach of ethical standards under active NDA constitutes grounds for retraction." Tyler nearly dropped his smoothie. I wasn't in the room, but I didn't need to be. I'd seen the signs, the emergency calendar block labeled urgent leadership plus legal that popped up 5 minutes after the all hands. The desperate Slack messages flying around from interns trying to figure out what a signatory freeze meant. I knew. I was at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching the whole company lurch sideways like a carnival ride with a loose bolt. One message came through on my private Slack channel. From Melanie in legal. Just 3 words, they're scrambling now. I replied with a thumbs up emoji and nothing else. Because here's the thing about systems built by people who only half understand power. They never plan for what happens when someone remembers how to use it. And Donna, quiet Donna, polite Donna, legacy Donna, had just yanked the emergency brake and walked away before anyone realized the tracks were missing. HR tried to jump in, of course. Sent an urgent message to the IT team, immediate access revocation for user, Donna R, clearance level rollback to base, full removal from compliance system. Its response, request denied. Permissions governed by legal vault system. Not synced with HRIS. Manual override requires founder-level authorization. Guess who was on a flight to Zurich for a disruption summit? Guess who didn't leave his phone on? Guess who didn't realize he left a live grenade ticking in his org chart? Meanwhile, Cody, now visibly sweating, whispered, "There's more." Brenda sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Jesus, what now? Cody scrolled to the bottom of the log. She filed a 14-day compliance trigger under Internal Policy Code 7.3, retaliation review. If we don't address it, we risk being in default with 3 of our federal vendor contracts. Tyler finally sat down. He looked like a deflated pool toy. "So you're saying I'm saying," Brenda said slowly, "you humiliated someone on camera who held the keys to half our skeleton closet." And she opened the door. I knew they'd try to claw it back, undo the filings, patch the holes. But here's the thing about legally binding digital signatures tied to active compliance roles. They aren't posts, they aren't stories, they can't be deleted, only answered. And now, company had 14 business days to answer to me. Tick, tock. HR came out swinging like they were auditioning for a courtroom drama no one asked for. They flooded inboxes with emails labeled urgent, opened a Slack channel called clarification on signing rights, and trotted out phrases like unauthorized execution and role ambiguity. They wanted it on record that I'd acted outside my current operational scope. Too bad the actual record said otherwise. See, in their rush to shove me out of every meaningful decision, they never bothered to do the one thing that mattered: revoke my signature clearance in the legal vault. Because unlike flashy HR dashboards and workflow widgets, that system runs old school. It's text-heavy, permission-hungry, and requires actual manual authentication from the founder himself to make critical access changes. Which meant when HR filed their little internal reassessment report on me, legal simply ran the approval audit trail, and there it was. Timestamped, immutable, 4 digital signatures from me, each one verified by the system. All of them connected to compliance alerts, NDA modifications, and 2 retention letters involving multi-year, multi-million-dollar accounts. Legal dropped that audit on the founder's desk the second he landed in Zurich. The story goes like this. He skimmed the summary, choked on his airport espresso, and said just 4 words: Donna still had clearance. They didn't need to answer. The logs did it for them. He dialed Brenda from legal. She picked up on the first ring. He asked, "Can this be undone?" Brenda replied, "Only by Donna, or a retroactive dual signatory override, which would expose us to intentional misrepresentation if we don't declare it to the clients. Translation: we either honor the documents or admit we broke protocol trying to erase them." Meanwhile, those clients were already circling like sharks. One contract, connected to a logistics firm we'd been chasing for 6 months, contained a clause I'd helped write back in the early days. Material leadership changes must be disclosed within 72 hours of an internal compliance trigger. Since I triggered one, and since no one informed the client, we were now in violation. Another contract, the real kicker, included a subclause I'd tucked into a retention agreement like a little insurance policy. If whistleblower protections are activated by a signatory party, the client shall be notified of potential ethical disruption. Guess what got triggered automatically when I filed that retaliation complaint last week? Guess who now had legal whistleblower status that couldn't be revoked unless someone wanted to tango with federal oversight? That's what Tyler didn't understand when he called me a legacy bottleneck with outdated methods on Slack publicly to 27 people, that every word was now protected evidence. When legal explained this to HR, the color drained from their faces like someone had pulled the fire alarm again. Because now it wasn't just about me. Now it was about the house of cards I'd been holding up with my silence, and I had just stepped back. Tyler, of course, tried to pivot, marched into a meeting with the founder, yes, on video, mid-Zurich jet lag, and declared this was a system oversight. Nobody told me Donna still had keys to the vault. The founder, running on caffeine and fury, snapped back, "You don't need to be told when to check locks before you kick a door in." Then he turned to legal and said, "Do we have to keep her signatures valid?" Brenda replied, "Unless you want to send an amended filing to every affected client explaining that you retroactively invalidated a whistleblower's signature. Yes." It was like watching a plane realize midair that one of its engines had been removed by someone trying to install a smoothie bar. Tyler didn't talk much after that. HR stopped sending me emails. The Slack channel went dark, and for the first time in years I felt light, not victorious, not smug, just steady. Because chaos outside only rattles you when you've got chaos inside. Me, I was all cleaned out. I'd scrubbed the bitterness with every page of that binder. I'd burned the resentment in every time-stamped click. Now I just watched. The company, it was still spinning. Legal triage, executive spin, PR drafting their commitment to transparency statement. But me, I was calm, because they forgot something crucial when they tried to erase me. They forgot who taught them how the damn system works. And now I wasn't in the way. I was the wall they just ran into. The founder's voice echoed off the glass walls of the executive suite like a gunshot in a cathedral. Why wasn't she removed from the system? Silence. Legal stood frozen, three of them in a semicircle, holding printouts like shields against incoming artillery. The blinds were half drawn, Zurich jet lag, still hanging off the founder like an unshaved regret. His tie was undone, his shirt clung to him like it too wanted to resign. Brenda stepped forward first. Brave, always brave. It was the old permission system, she said carefully, before HRIS integration. Her clearance wasn't rolled into the sink. We assumed he cut her off. You assumed? You assumed the person who helped write our original escalation protocol wouldn't notice she still had nuclear launch codes? Cody, the junior analyst, tried to step in. Technically, sir, her role was never stopped, the founder snapped. He pressed his fingers to his temple like he could push the migraine back inside. You're telling me a senior operator, fully credentialed, filed multiple compliance triggers and nobody flagged it in real time? Brenda didn't answer. She didn't have to, because the problem wasn't just that I still had signing power. The problem was that I'd used it. And now those signatures, inked into retention letters, vendor contracts, and compliance filings, weren't just documentation. They were landmines. Landmines buried under decisions Tyler and HR made in their crusade to modernize the culture. Like firing 4 mid-level managers for underperformance 2 days after my badge flash, terminations that, per internal policy, required a co-signature from an authorized operations lead if the affected employees had been with the company longer than 5 years. Guess who didn't co-sign? Guess who should have? Guess what happens when you fire people improperly while an active compliance review is underway? You get lawsuits, you get clawbacks, you get frozen contracts, class action whispers, and legal bleeding out in red ink. The founder rubbed his face. How many actions were taken after that badge stunt that now require retroactive validation? Cody replied, 9, sir, so far. Brenda added, 5 of those are externally facing. 3 touch federal contracts. Jesus Christ. He slumped back into the chair, looked up. Did she know? Everyone in the room blinked like deer caught in philosophical headlights. Did I know? I was sitting at my desk, floor below, like nothing had happened. Desk plants still green. Desktop tidy. A mug that said good enough is for amateurs steaming quietly beside me. Of course I knew. I designed the rulebook. The entire foundation of their little empire had been built using policies and guardrails I helped create back when the company was running on ramen and borrowed hope. Now, they'd stripped me of visibility but forgot to disarm the back end. So I'd waited, documented, measured every slight like it was a brick I'd eventually use to build my way out. And when the time came, I signed everything calmly. Correctly, because chaos doesn't win wars, paperwork does. I was a goddamn general. Meanwhile, the panic kept rising upstairs. Legal was trying to figure out how to amend post-termination files without admitting the terminations themselves had violated protocol. HR was drafting corrective narratives to explain away the missteps. PR was spinning statements so hard they were writing in circles. And the founder? He was just now realizing that Donna, the woman they'd muted, sidelined, and quietly erased, hadn't made a sound since. Not a word, not a single email, just signatures, one after another, each one pulling a thread they couldn't unpull. At my desk, I watched the lights flicker on and off in the executive suite. Watched figures pace past frosted glass, gesturing like lifeboats in a storm. A notification pinged on my screen. Slack message from Melanie in legal. 3 terminations flagged. Retaliation risk confirmed. You already signed the 7.3 trigger. They can't reverse it. I didn't reply. I closed the message, took a sip of coffee, and waited. Because the thing about signing something isn't just the signature. It's the timing, it's when you do it. Why? They thought my badge was a bluff, a relic, but it was the detonator. And the countdown had already started. They sent Marcy. Not legal, not HR, not even Tyler, who'd apparently developed a sudden allergy to confrontation and accountability. No, they sent Marcy, the director of organizational wellness, who once made me attend a virtual sound bath to cleanse negative energy after a supply chain breakdown. She arrived at my desk all breathy apologies and faux empathy, clutching a folder like it contained divine forgiveness. Hey Donna, she said, like we were old friends who once shared a wine cooler at an offsite. I just wanted to talk things through, off the record. Unofficially, she sat before I answered, always a bad sign. I closed my laptop slowly, leaned back, and waited. Marcy folded her hands like she was about to lead a prayer. The leadership team really values your legacy here. Really, we know you've been through a lot of transitions, and we recognize there may have been communication breakdowns. That phrase, communication breakdowns, like everything I endured was just a missed Slack ping. She continued. So, in light of everything, we're prepared to offer a consulting retainer, short term, of course, so you can help us correct some procedural misalignments. Just to make sure everything's clean and doesn't affect our external relationships. Nothing too involved, very hands off. Translation, we'll pay you to quietly retract the signatures that are currently stapling our leadership to the wall. I let the silence bloom between us. Let it stretch long enough for her confidence to wilt. Then I smiled, not big, not cruel, just enough. Do you want that in writing? I asked. She blinked. What? I repeated it, slower, more deliberate. Your offer. Do you want it documented? Or do you want to keep this as, what was it, unofficial? A flicker of panic flashed behind her eyes because she knew. She knew that if I asked for it in writing, it became a bribe. And if I didn't, well, then I was just another story that evaporated under the office lights. Except I wasn't, because an hour before Marcy showed up, I'd already logged in. Opened the same old vault. Navigated the crusty backend only 3 of us knew how to operate. And I drafted one final filing. Voluntary resignation C-level clearance. The form required one final sign-off from the departing signatory. Me, I signed it, digitally, time-stamped, immutable. Then I opened a new email window, typed in the founder's address. CC'd legal. BCC'd myself at a personal account just for the record. Subject line, 04/1110, 03 a.m. No greeting, no explanation. Just the attached resignation form with my full name and badge number embedded. With that signature, every filing I'd submitted in the last 14 days became locked. Legally, irreversibly. Tampering now meant federal exposure, which meant the only way out was through. I sent the email, then turned back to Marcy. I said, there's this thing I used to tell junior staff whenever they messed something up and tried to bury it. She leaned forward, eager for the quote. I didn't smile this time. If you don't know how the engine works, I said, maybe don't try to rebuild it mid-flight. She stood up, folder still in her lap. Forgotten. No more talking points. No more offers. Just the weight of a building coming down in slow motion. When she left, I cleaned out my desk. One mug, one succulent, one binder, now nearly too thick for its spine. As I walked out, I passed Tyler in the hallway. He looked like someone had unplugged him. Pale, sweaty, holding his phone like it betrayed him. He opened his mouth. I walked right past, didn't look back, didn't have to. My final move wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a threat. It was a form, filed properly, countersigned by the very system they forgot to dismantle. I didn't burn the place down. I just turned off the oxygen and walked out calm as a closing bell. The boardroom was silent, the kind of silence that swells until it feels like pressure in your ears just before a storm hits. Blinds drawn, jackets off, half-finished coffees forgotten and curdling. Legal stood at the head of the table. Brenda held the paper like it was radioactive. Her voice was steady, but no one missed the tension dragging through every syllable. This, she said, holding it aloft, is the final co-signed activation of Policy 7.3, initiated by Donna. Submitted at 10:03 a.m. It triggered an external compliance review. Mandatory, not optional. We're already legally bound. The founder sat slumped at the end of the table, hands tented, breathing like someone had just delivered a terminal diagnosis. His voice came out in a rasp. Please tell me she didn't have signing rights. Brenda didn't flinch. She did, she replied, and she used all of them. No one moved. Then Cody, still stuck playing messenger boy in hell, added, also 3 vendors have suspended contract negotiations pending outcome. And Cormack and Dole, the logistics client, just served a preliminary breach notice. They're suing. That broke the room. A chorus of papers rustling. A sharp curse. Someone's knuckle cracked like a gunshot. Tyler stood against the far wall, ghost white, trying to disappear into the drywall. He hadn't said a word since Marcy came back downstairs like she'd seen death in yoga pants. He still didn't speak now, just stared blankly at the audit printout like it might change if he blinked hard enough. Brenda looked up from the document. She followed every policy, every step, not one error, not one excess action. Didn't act emotionally, she acted procedurally. You can't invalidate this without opening us up to intentional suppression. The founder stood slowly, walked to the window, stared at nothing. I built this place, he muttered, from a damn garage. And she kept it from falling apart longer than anyone else could, Brenda replied, not unkindly. He didn't answer, because he couldn't. The truth was sitting in front of him, stamped and time-logged, wearing Donna's name like a final judgment. Downstairs, I stepped out of the elevator for the last time. The hallway was quieter than usual. People moved like they were trying not to be seen, as if the building itself had grown eyes and was now watching. I didn't rush. I carried my little cardboard box like a queen carries a scepter. And then I saw him, Tyler, standing by the reception desk, arms folded, staring at the floor like it owed him an apology. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, met my eyes, and looked away. I stopped beside him, no gloating, no venom. Just the same even tone I'd used for years when he still mistook me for someone beneath him. You should have unmuted me, I said, his jaw clenched. He didn't speak. Didn't have to. I turned, walked out. The glass doors slid open like curtains on the final act. Sunlight, noise, freedom. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just walked. And as the building faded behind me, I whispered it. One last time, not for them, not even for me, just for the record. My badge said authorized signatory, not doormat. And with that, Donna was gone. The company would survive, maybe, probably, but not intact, not unscarred. They'd have to explain and redact and renegotiate. They'd write new policies. They'd hold webinars on resilience. But they'd always remember the day someone, they called obsolete, walked out without a single scream, and still managed to pull the floor out from under all of them. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.